殺し、こちらも救援用に強銃ミサイルを一発直ちに発射させる。
With their insect-like antennae that never move except with a turn of their head, their broadened eyes that never ever blink, their fully exposed clenched teeth that never open, even whenever they speak, and their diverse racial colors representing their rank, role, or authority amongst their army, the Garoga Baron are some of the most generic, and yet some of the most amusing villains to ever be featured in sci-fi. Very little is known about the Garogas outside their necessity to destroy and conquer other worlds into their domain. Is the entirety of their race comprised of maniacal killers seeking wanton death and destruction to anything that isn't a Garoga? What's life like on their planet anyway? Not once throughout the 26 episodes are we informed of the culture of the Garoga homeworld. The only thing we're ever shown of the planet's existence is a brief shot of it from outer space, and that's the clearest glimpse we ever receive of the backstory of the Garogas. Other than that, they're just the one and only big bads of the series whose sole role is to be hated by the audience for being bad. Nothing more, nothing less. Since the Sakamoris have a powerful barrier surrounding their house, the Garogas can't simply blow them away with a missile. Nor can they use a Kyouju to smash their house to smithereens. So the Garogas have to resort to other means to carry out a successful attack. Nearly 100% of the time, this calls for them to send down a small squadron to infiltrate the area and carry out a complex and sophisticated operation to rid themselves of the Zone family. Harboring the power to disguise themselves as humans, it can sometimes prove to be a bit strenuous for the heroes to pick them out of a crowd. The only way to tell if a person is a Garoga in disguise is that, in their human form, they sport a pair of hands that are webbed like some kind of amphibian. The aliens are able to mask their physical deformity by wearing gloves to maintain their illusion. Because of this, the heroes generally have to wait for the Garogas to make the first move, which often culminates after the enemy has led the heroes into a trap. With that said, let's step back to something I said earlier about the Garogas possessing a variety of different colored faces amongst their team. The most common Garogas that are seen throughout the series are the Silver Garogas. These serve as the henchmen that are sent down to Earth to track down the Zone family when they step out of the confines of their home, as well as to seek out any other information they can get their hands on, including the capture of humans that are close to the family in hopes of drawing them out into a trap. Or abduct a group of scientists to develop a weapon that could be used to kill the Sakamoris with zero effort. Then we have the Red Garogas, which are employed to helm control over the Silvers during the aforementioned raids on the planet. Outside the battlefield, we have the White Garogas. These are the scientist groups that design and create the various Kyouju for the proposed invasions. Finally, we have the Gold Garoga, who serves as the general of the squadron. Out of all the enemies that needed a backstory, I feel that the general at least deserves some kind of telling of his life story. His age, how he became the commander of the series' army, the amount of training he had to endure to reach his rank as a Gold Garoga. Actually, now that I think about it, are all the specific Garogas born with their depicted color? Or are they somehow granted their specified color depending on their rank? In all honesty, that's the question that I really want answered. Another con about the villains is that it's kind of tricky trying to discern just how effective they are in combat. You see, another character featured in the series is Takeru Joe, played by Hideaki Obara. He's a model shop owner who met the Sakamoris during a scheme by the Garogas in the second episode. Throughout the course of the series, Takeru will step in to assist the family in their seemingly never-ending battle with the Garogas. He'll even go so far as to fight off the Garogas in hand-to-hand combat, and seems to be able to hold his own just fine. There was even one episode where he was able to fight off a small group of silver Garogas without any members of the Zone family around. Which just begs the question, just how deadly are the Garogas in combat, if a guy who owns a toy store is enough to fight off an entire group with his bare hands? Or could this go to show just how useless the silver Garogas are in the battlefield? Ordinarily, I would ask why the Garogas manufacture and deploy only 1 or 2 Kyouju at a time, as opposed to deploying an entire onslaught of them to be used against Zone Fighter. But there's actually one episode in which they do carry out that concept. Rather than letting the writers save that idea for, say, the final episode, or perhaps a multi-part series finale, the idea of the Garogas unleashing a whole army of the Kyouju to wreak devastation on Earth was reserved for the second to last episode of the show. An episode that had zero impact on the rest of the series, by the way. To be fair, though, nearly all of the episodes were pure filler, leaving very little room for consistency, which was yet another similar aspect that this series shared with the original Ultraman. And what's more is the fact that the aliens can't seem to conquer the planet because it's being protected by the Zone family, a group of 6 people hailing from a foreign planet that the Garogas already decimated in just the blink of an eye. The power of contrived plot convenience is almost stunning here. Maybe it's their unique design, or possibly the interesting operations they conjure up to fight the Zone family. But for some reason, I find the Garogas far too enjoyable to hate, no matter how poorly written they are.
山の天気は変わりやすいので、雨でも降らないうちに山を降りた方がいいですよ。はい。
One aspect that helps to dull the negatives in their portrayal is that some of the Garogas possess the ability to change into a terror beast at will. In a couple of episodes, 2 or more Garogas could merge together, which then triggered their giant manifestation. But there was also at least one episode that I can remember where one Garoga was able to change on his own. This is one wickedly awesome power to have in a war with a species of another planet. As previously mentioned, even though the show was helmed by a group of experienced Toho veterans, the show was produced with a total budget of about 500 million yen, which is equivalent to about $4,500,000. Which was a rather minuscule budget compared to any entry of Super Aya's long-going Ultraman series, resulting in a brand of effects that are kind of a mixed bag, to say the least. Some were great, some were average, some were a little lackluster. First, let's examine the positives. The large variety of Kyouju presented in the series are actually pretty nicely detailed and executed. Sure, there are a few kind of cheesy-looking monsters every here and there, but the silly-looking ones can actually treat us with a more entertaining experience with that creature's respective episode appearance. Even the better-looking monsters have a few cons in their design, but those little negatives don't do enough to stand out and become a distraction during the 3-minute fight with Zone Fighter. And speaking of Zone Fighter, I really admire his design. Yes, it comes off as an obvious Ultraman clone, replacing the red details with blue, while still maintaining the silver portions. but his barrage of special abilities and even the almost hint of seriousness in his facial design just make him seem so badass to watch in action. Some of his abilities involve practical effects that are like nothing we've ever seen or will ever see in live-action fiction ever again. For instance, his signature weapon is his Meteor Missile Might. Hoisting his hands in the air, and after a quick dissolve or jump cut, a band of missile launchers will form around Zone Fighter's wrists. These missiles are capable of dealing extreme damage to the opponent, and are often used as his trademark kill in nearly every episode. It must have been pretty awesome for the stunt actor to literally fire a barrage of rockets off his wrists at another guy in a monster suit, assuming the effects crew had taken extra precautions to ensure the stuntmen on set wouldn't be harmed by the array of pyrotechnics that were used during the action scenes. Actually, considering the conditions they had to work with on set, as well as the numerous injuries Haruo Nakajima and Kengo Nakayama suffered during their long run in the business, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys sustained a few scrapes and burns of their own each day. Among his other abilities is his proton beam that he fires from the stock above his forehead. The beam is animated. The only practical aspect about it is the explosive charge set off on the terror beast that is hit by it. One ability of Zone Fighter that I really liked was an ability he used whenever he was still in his human-sized space form, known as the Astral Dash. When a Kyouju or some kind of danger is afoot, Zone Fighter can literally teleport to another location, and even better, he can actually, in one instance, fly into a TV screen, and next thing you know, he is automatically teleported to the location. It just blew my mind whenever I saw it. It was just one of the coolest, and at the same time, one of the funniest things I had ever seen in tokusatsu. Kind of silly at the same time. But despite that, it was just so enjoyable, there's just no way I could actually bring myself to say anything negative about it. Just like Ultraman, Zone Fighter is equipped with the ability to fly, even in outer space. In all of the wide-angle shots, Zone Fighter is portrayed by a miniaturized prop that swung through the air via wires. In some instances, they use a full-body suit propped in front of the camera, but only for tight close-ups that don't expose the platform or object that's suspending the actor in place. It wasn't always 100% convincing, but for what it was a decent effect. Once again, the Terror Beasts truly are some of the coolest monsters I've ever seen in fiction. My personal favorites are Gondor Gilas, Grotogoros, and Jikaro, among a few others. It'd be a little tricky trying to compile a top 10 list of my favorite Kyouju from the series, aside from the aforementioned 3, as I really like a lot of the beasts featured in the series. They were bleak, stylish, original, and some of them were molded in a way just to provide a sense of humor for the episode, which only made me love the beasts even more. And interestingly, unlike what was seen in Ultraman, every single monster was designed from scratch. In the Ultraman series, there would often be a monster that was made from a refurbished suit that was used in the Godzilla or Gamera series, or even from a past Ultraman episode or series. For instance, Naranga was made from Baragon, and Gabora was made from the Baragon suit with Gamera's head on it. And I'm pretty sure we all know what monster suit was used to make Jiris. For the monsters in Zone Fighter, every single Kyouju was based on its own unique details, which I think is a major accomplishment because I often found the monsters made from a recycled suit to be kind of distracting. Amusing, but distracting. But that's just my opinion. That's yet another pro that I have to offer to Zone Fighter. And in case you were wondering, yes, the Godzilla suit used in this series was the exact same Godzilla suit that was used in Godzilla vs. Megalon. Obviously, the reason why they reused the Meguro Goji suit was because they couldn't spare the time or money to create a new suit. To compensate for this little con, the Toho effects crew opted to use the Godzilla suit that was still in fresh condition. Few people may have noticed that in Godzilla vs. Megalon, Godzilla's eyes never moved or blinked, not even during the action scenes. This was due to the limited schedule and money that the crew was forced to work with during the movie's production. Without enough time or money on their side, the crew couldn't perfect the robotic instrument used to control the monster's eye articulations. Thankfully, during the making of Zone Fighter, the crew was given slightly more money and time to fix the mechanical device. This allowed Godzilla to rotate and blink his eyes when it was necessary on screen. By accomplishing this effect, the suit was able to convey more emotional as well as authentic value through the design.